What's up, Flannelverse? We are back. NFL season starts tonight, which means that this channel is going to be a ton of Showdown content, probably some other regular slate content as well. We're going to have, of course, the Tuesday show with Mythology as well, but primarily going to be focused on Showdown on this channel. I'm going to be live every Monday, Thursday, and Sunday before lock, doing shows up until lock or close to lock, starting about 85 to 90 minutes before lock. Every single one of those days: Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, and Monday Night Football. We're also back with this show with Adam, ShipMyMoney, Scherer, and we're getting an upgrade this year because the show is actually sponsored by Run the Sims. Now, you might associate Adam with Endgame Syndicate if you don't keep up with everything that happens in the DFS space. Endgame Syndicate actually bought Run the Sims this year, so Adam is one of the owners of Run the Sims, and Showdown shows are going to be sponsored by Run the Sims this year. We're going to be running the Sims on the show quite a bit. Full disclosure, I'm still pretty new to using the Run the Sims product. I'm not fully,
Me too.
I'm not perfect with using it. Neither is that. I mean, they just bought it like this summer. So everybody at Run the Sims, not only they bought it, and now they're all trying to upgrade Run the Sims, change it to do what they wanted to do. Adam, how is that going for you?
It's going well for me. I'm not involved in the coding, so I've been working hard on the projections and I think improving that stuff, and I'm really happy with how that's going so far. I am glad for the first time in my life that I have no idea how to code, because nobody can ask me to help out with whatever they're trying to do. But no, overall, I think it's going well. I'm excited for the season. It's nice to, have the ability to build and use what you want to use and know how things work. So yeah, really excited about that. Obviously excited about the group of guys we have with Yuta and Brick and Nerdy and Davis. So yeah, I'm really excited for the season. Obviously stressed out right now with it being the first game and hoping everything works well and all of that. But yeah, really excited for the season.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I'm not somebody who just will work with anybody. I get offers all the time to work with various companies, and I hear them out, and usually I don't do a lot of them if I don't feel good about the company. The reason I'm working with Run the Sims obviously is not just because Adam is one of the owners, but then also Yuta Cow, Nerdy Tenor, Brick 75, Davis, just a great group of some of the best DFS players on the planet. I'm confident in the product, even though I don't really know what I'm doing with it yet. So looking forward to getting to know the product better. I have not put out any kind of tutorial on how to use it. I will be doing that at some point. So if anybody is, wanting to sign up for Run the Sims, by the way, you can get 10% off your first purchase using promo code Neil if you want to check out the Run the Sims product. There's a lot of different offerings there. You can find that at runthesims.com. But we're going to get into it. We're going to just start the show as usual, not running the Sims, just going position by position. Does that work for you, Adam?
Yeah, I was going to say, I will say that part of my nervousness, I think, has been alleviated because I hadn't had a chance to even really look at the lineups that I was getting before the show. And so I was afraid that I was going to just have a bunch of garbage, but looking through them, I think everything actually looks good. So
I will say I've used it a little bit, just kind of testing it out because I wanted to have some idea what I'm doing before I start doing shows using Run the Sims.
Right.
And I was pleased with how the lineups looked in the few runs that I did. It seemed like they correlated in the ways that I want them to. They looked like they projected well. So the top lineups in terms of EV looked like good lineups to me. So that was promising. Not a surprise, obviously, with the team at Run the Sims.
Yeah. I had the same experience whenever I would just kind of rerun projections and run sims and stuff, but I hadn't actually run my showdown process that I would use with the Run the Sim stuff yet. So a lot of times, obviously if you're switching sites in general, and trying to just take an exact same process over, you end up running into things where it's oh, that doesn't work exactly that way, but everything actually looks good. So that's nice. One potential headache I don't think I'm gonna have.
We will. So the questions and lineup section, if you look at the sidebar over there, didn't really use that in this show last year, but if you have time, Adam, I would like to just check out Run the Sims at the end, try to run it and maybe answer some questions about Run the Sims, just briefly, if you have time for it.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. All right. But we're going to start just going position by position, starting with quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends. We'll brief look at defenses, kickers, and then we'll do questions and lineups at the end. But before we get into it, if you would, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel. I set the goal at 6,000 by the end of the NFL season. We're just short of 4,700 currently. So if you would subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. Liking the video also helps out quite a bit to spread the word about the channel. And if you want to get alerts when I go live, click that little notification bell. But let's get into it, Adam. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. We can pull up the ownership here. So we'll start with the Eagles side. Jalen Hurts, 52% projected ownership in the flex at RotoGrinders, but you can also get 10% off your first month of RotoGrinder, or $10 off. Link in the description if you want that. 22% projected ownership at captain for Jalen Hurts. So that's kind of a lot of ownership going to Hurts. How do you feel about that level of ownership? So just under 75% total ownership.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to what I think I'm getting right now. Like if the slate were to start right now, Hurts would be my highest owned captain at like 21%. In the flex, he's showing up like 50%. So I'm pretty close to that. And I like it. One thing I noticed going through and doing the projections was on Philadelphia in general, our model, we are very close to market on, props for the Philly guys, but we are a little bit rush heavy because Dallas, has struggled to defend it. Philadelphia obviously is very happy to do it. So we were, like 1 or 2 pass attempts below market on Hurts, which wouldn't, most quarterbacks, if you're rush heavy, it's not good for them. But for Philadelphia, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like you still have a lot of rushing touchdown equity, obviously, with Hurts. I think we had him projected like around 40 rushing yards or something like that. So obviously gets you the rushing floor that you don't get with Dak. And like obviously the, flip side here is Dak is probably going to throw a lot. So, you do get that kind of game script argument for Dak as well. But, obviously Hurts not your normal quarterback. So having a spot where, Philadelphia is likely to be relatively rush heavy doesn't hurt him. It can hurt him, obviously, if they're rush heavy because they're just, beating the shit out of Dallas, then you're not getting too many Jalen Hurts carries probably because there's no reason for it. So like in that regard, it can obviously be bad. But if you just get a game where, Philadelphia is a little more run heavy than usual, still obviously, producing through the air at least somewhat, and you still get the massive rushing touchdown upside for Hurts as well.
Yeah, this game has an 8.5 point spread. The Eagles have the best offensive line, like the consensus looking through offensive line rankings. Basically, I think everywhere has them ranked as the top offensive line in the NFL. And now Dallas, like a little bit, thrown up in the air of what to expect from Dallas with Micah Parsons gone. Just like they have to adjust to having new defensive pieces now, which is kind of an interesting situation here. Like I'm kind of playing it as though I kind of expect the Eagles to dominate this game. It's also in Philadelphia, but you never really know, which, yeah, like you said, not necessarily a negative for Hurts if they're playing from ahead as much as it would be for some quarterbacks. But it's, yeah, an interesting situation there. Does that do anything for you as far as the correlations go? Looking at your lineups, do you have any idea when you have Hurts in the captain spot, do you think you're going to be stacking him up in general with one pass catcher, multiple pass catchers? Any kind of idea what that's going to look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of scrolling through. It looks like kind of like a mix. Like there are some, there are some weird mixes. Hurts with defense, running backs. Like one of the first ones I looked at has both Barkley and Shipley and the defense, which I guess. That and Elliott, like that makes sense. It's pretty easy, I think, to see how like that game script, I guess, could work out where Philadelphia does just run away with it. It's a low scoring fantasy game in general. So Hurts is still like the leading scorer. Maybe he scores a couple touchdowns, and then you just get, Barkley and Shipley running out the clock. Defense scores points for the Eagles. So like that one, I think, could make some sense. Obviously a lot of just like Hurts and Barkley because of raw projection there. Not too many, at least at the top, like double stacks with receivers, but there are some. Hurts, Brown, Smith, Hurts, Brown, Goddard. Actually just found them like full on slot with Brown, Goddard, Smith. So it's really kind of just mixed as far as the stack types go with Hurts at captain for me.
Nice. So that's something that we talked about a little bit last year. Like it was something that I kind of leaned into last year with the rushing quarterbacks, having him in the captain spot and then multi-stacking them, double, triple stacking them, like doing full on slots with rushing quarterbacks in the captain spot, because I speculated last year that it would go under-owned. Like the field is going to typically under-own that. And you said, yeah, I think that is a good instinct, but I'd like to see, the actual data there before I actually play it. And I saw Cody Main actually did a little bit of digging into the data and did find that tends to be underutilized, the rushing quarterback in the captain spot, multi-stacked. So I was glad to see that. And that's something that I'm definitely going to have in some of my lineups, the Hurts Hurts with multiple stacking partners in the flex. But yeah, he's a rushing quarterback. So typically for me, that means you can play them unstacked anywhere in your lineup, including in the captain spot. I typically still am going to want to stack him up when I have him at captain. But yeah, he's definitely kind of his own thing with the amount that he scores touchdowns as well from the quarterback position. Yeah, and I think I'm probably with you. I'm going to be close to the field. I bet I would end up a little bit underweight to the field on Hurts, but remains to be seen. On the other side, we have Dak Prescott, who is projected for just under 9% captain ownership and 44% projected ownership in the flex. So like 54% ownership in total for a quarterback who tends to play at a fast pace. When Dak is a quarterback for the Cowboys, they tend to play up in pace. They should be playing from behind most likely. I mean, you never really know. NFL is so chaotic, but could be playing from behind here as George Pickens. Seems pretty good to me. How are you feeling about Dak? How much are you getting?
Yeah, I'm getting a good amount, like 11% at captain, 42 at flex. Obviously, very appealing stacking options when you have CD Lamb, when you have George Pickens now. Like on the one hand, yeah, Pickens is a higher, higher usage guy than Lamb typically plays with, and vice versa. Pickens going from being a clear one to playing with CD Lamb, but also it's going to be very difficult to defend. You have a good tight end in Ferguson as well. I'm getting some Hunter Lepke, which is always a problem for me when Dallas plays. But that aside, as a value piece with Dak, Dak stacks, it helps that, and this applies to Hurts too, even though obviously you're expecting a lot more throwing from Dak than from Hurts. Like the receiving cores for both of these teams are certainly very appealing to get to not only the one, but the two, the tight end. Like you have multiple very good pass catchers on both of these teams, and it's kind of the nice thing about Dallas too is like, I mean, they could, I guess, run away with this game, but like obviously that's not the very likely thing. So like if they're playing from behind, as long as again, as long as it's not like a true blowout, you're just getting Pickens and Lamb peppered by Dak. If it's a competitive game, that's what Dallas wants to do anyway. Like you're not gonna necessarily not that they're gonna forego the run, but your options are use Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, or use CD Lamb, Dak Prescott, and George Pickens. I think within reason, you're obviously going to lean that direction. So it's relatively game flow independent, I think, as well.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty into. I imagine I'll end up over the field on 53% Dak if that's where he ends up. Seems like a good spot there. I don't know how much over, because you can only play so many pieces, and
Right.
he's like sort of expensive, and there's a lot of players I want to play. But I do imagine I'll end up at least a little bit overweight on Dak. And then as far as I'm stacking, I'm probably going to have him double stacked whenever I have him in the captain spot. They did talk a little bit. The coaches talked. Schottenheimer, head coach, talked a little bit about Dak needing to be able to use his legs. Like quarterbacks in the league these days need to be able to run a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be like a huge thing for them where they're trying to prioritize Dak running. He's never been like an elite rusher. So I think most of my lineups where I have Dak in the captain spot, I will have him at least double stacked. And then I'll always have him stacked up regardless of where he is in the lineup, because I just don't think he's going to put up, 10 fantasy points on the ground. I think if you have Dak in your lineup, he's probably bringing along at least one pass catcher. Is that what you're finding in your sims?
Yeah, that's pretty much what a lot of my Dak lineups look like. Not necessarily, obviously it's not always, Dak, Lamb, Pickens, but Dak, Lamb, Turpin, Lepke for value. Dak, Pickens, Lepke, Ferguson, uh, Lamb, Pickens, more Lamb, Pickens, Lamb, Ferguson, Tolbert, Turpin, like full stack there. So yeah, it's a lot. I don't see, just scrolling through, I don't see any like Dak plus Lamb single stacks. It's where Dak is captain, pretty aggressively getting to just the full Cowboys passing game. And again, that it's a really good team to do that with also. And it makes Dak more appealing at captain when you have, relatively statuesque quarterbacks. Not that he's, like you said, he'll run a little bit, but when you have quarterbacks that are accumulating most of their production through the air, it is nice when it's not like CD Lamb and then a bunch of nobodies, because then it's very hard to walk that line where Dak has a great score, but CD Lamb doesn't. Here, he has enough options where it's completely realistic that CeeDee Lamb catches a touchdown, George Pickens catches a touchdown, Jake Ferguson catches a touchdown, and Dak is your captain.
Yeah, absolutely. So he does seem like he is definitely a viable captain, getting low ownership here. I'm realizing this being the first Showdown show of the season. I should kind of explain for people who are maybe new to Showdown or just don't remember, the reason we want to stack up the quarterback when we have him in the captain spot is because of the scoring dynamics on DraftKings. Well, first of all, the quarterbacks are usually among the most expensive players on the slate. But then on top of that, every time a quarterback throws the ball, the pass catcher scores more points than them. They get 1 point per reception. They get more points per touchdown, per yard. So every time there is a passing play, the receiver outscores the quarterback. So if the quarterback is throwing too much to just one option, then that option tends to outscore the quarterback. It's difficult for the quarterback to be the optimal captain if they are just hyper focused on one receiver, because again, the receiver is outscoring them on every single play. So it's kind of a thin line for the quarterback to get there. It can happen if they're really spreading the ball around a lot, like Adam was referring to. You see that occasionally where it's just like they throw it to 8 different receivers and somehow they're scoring a lot of points without bringing along multiple receivers. But typically for the quarterbacks who don't score a lot of points on the ground, if they're doing it through the air, they are, if they're going to be the optimal captain, they're usually going to bring along multiple pass catchers because of the scoring dynamic. And then again, because they are the most expensive or one of the most expensive players on the slate, typically that adds to it. If it was a $5,000 quarterback, they could be the quarterback because of the multiplier in the captain spot. But because they're usually expensive, also it's difficult for a non-rushing quarterback to be the captain unless they are spreading the ball around and bringing multiple pieces along with them. I think that's about all I have to say about the quarterback. Do you have anything else to say about the quarterback position?
Nope.
All right, we'll move on to running backs. I do want to say I appreciate all of you in chat. I see you. We're trying to move the show along, so I'm not going to comment on everybody. I will say Shady Advice. I didn't even mention it. Part of the Run the Sims product this year, it's an add-on to the Run the Sims product. But you're also partnered with Shady Advice, who has a portfolio optimizer, which is kind of the thing that sets him apart. He is maybe the best DFS player on the planet, certainly up there as one of the best DFS players on the planet, up there with Yuta right now. And a big part of his process is involves his portfolio optimizer, which I haven't had a chance to play around with it at all, Adam, yet. I'm going to need to really look into how to use that. Maybe talk to Shady Advice. Is that true for you also, or are you familiar with how to use it yet, or are you still learning?
Yeah,
that
so
as well?
it's pretty easy to use. You just tell it how many lineups you're playing, and you click a button, and it gives you the results. So it's nice in that regard. But yeah, I'm really excited about that. I think it was on your show. It was on one of the Showdown shows we did last year that I was talking about. I think he like when I look at his player exposures in general, he is probably the most consistently in line with, in my head, how I would want to manage my risk and my lineups. And I've spent a lot of time trying to build my own stuff that does exactly what I want. I've never really succeeded. So I was really happy when that partnership came about, and fully excited to use that. And yeah, it's really simple. He also is in our Discord. He has his own channel in there for anybody that subscribes and does have questions for him. But yeah, it's very easy to use.
Yeah, I was also excited when you guys partner with him. That was I'm happy to be partnering with the Run the Sims team right now, particularly with Shady as well. And I believe, and this has not been totally confirmed to me, I believe the promo code Neil would also work if you want to sign up with the package that includes the Shady optimizer. Shady seemed to think it would work. So yeah, if you use that at Run the Sims, it should work for the 10% off. We're going to move on to the running back position here. Saquon Barkley is where we will start. He is the clear top running back on the slate, projected for 40% ownership in the flex and 14% ownership at captain. That's pretty appealing to me, particularly the captain ownership. Are you getting to a lot of Saquon, or what are you seeing with Saquon?
I'm actually not. He's the only, well, I don't have ownership in front of me, but he's the only, star player that I don't have a considerable amount of at captain, really. And I think that was kind of the case for me last year as well, which obviously did not work out ever. But one, I think you're expecting some regression this year, just in terms of at least, yards per carry, probably or possibly also in terms of workload. But even I think, for Showdown, it's mostly just a function of he is really expensive. He doesn't, I talked about this with running back captains in the past too. with quarterbacks, it's nice because you have that correlation built in. With running backs, you don't. Like, there's no. It's just one more thing you have to get right, kind of like when you think about. Yeah, everybody is like aware of correlations now, and it's kind of just like second nature that, like, yeah, you want to play quarterbacks with pass catchers, but like one of the big reasons it's strong is that it's limiting the number of things that you have to get right. Because if you get right that Dak is the highest scorer on the slate, it becomes very, very likely that multiple Dallas receivers had good games. Whereas if you get it right that Barkley is the highest scorer on the slate, that really tells you fucking nothing else about the slate. So there's that. There's the salary itself, and then also when you do get players that are more expensive, it becomes that much more difficult to avoid heavily duping as well, just because your options get more and more limited. So I think that's probably what's driving it for me. Like, I have him in a little over half my lineups at flex, like 57%, but I only have like 3% at captain right now, which obviously can bury me, but
Wow. Okay.
it's not the end of but like I don't mind it either.
Yeah. So from a like looking at the game perspective, I think Saquon makes a ton of sense at captain.
Oh
Just
yeah.
from a like they have the best offensive line in the league. They're going up against a sort of broken down Cowboy. Who knows how good the Cowboys defense will be? They also got in a defensive player back in the trade who should help in the run game, but it should be a good spot for the Eagles to just be able to run it out against the Cowboys. But then there's also the like, if they get up by too much, then would they take Saquon out? He also had 1 billion carries last year, so definitely some risk there. But I imagine.
And the other thing there too is, like, obviously I agree with everything you said, but we haven't projected for 20 carries. We haven't projected for like 100 yards rushing, and I'm still not getting to him. Like it's not.
Yeah.
It's not like I disagree or projected him.
Yeah.
Differently, like to not absolutely smash here.
Right. You've got him projected to smash, and you're still only getting 3% in the captain spot. I mean, that is worth noting. I imagine I'll have more than 3%. He's somebody that I'm going to prioritize, I think, but I have not run the Sims yet. So I guess that will be something that I'll have to look at again on my evening stream before lock. We'll look, see if I'm still playing a ton of Saquon.
Yeah.
But that is obviously my instinct. But then I imagine you're playing him still in the flex. Is that
true? I have like 57% at flex. And also, what I would say about the captain exposure is, like, obviously when you talk about individual player exposures, it's interesting to listen to and all of that, but like you're still talking about overall lineups. And so player exposures don't really matter. I mean, obviously they matter in the context of like one single slate, but the one thing that I would say about me not having a lot of Barkley right now, I feel fine about it because my highest captains are Hurts, Dak, Brown, Smith, Lamb, Pickens.
Yeah.
I would feel much differently if, for whatever reason, I run Sims, I go through my process, and I'm getting lineups that are telling me like I should be playing a bunch of the shitty value guys at captain and then paying up at flex and just doing that over and over and over. I would feel a lot worse about if I was looking at a pool of lineups like that than looking at a pool of lineups that says like, oh yeah, you're just going to play a bunch of all of the best players in this game and it's going to cost you some Saquon.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. We do have a lot of pretty strong options on the slate as far as captains go. Like there are a lot of stars on both teams, so that does make sense to me. The rest of the Eagles running back room to me is just probably Will Shipley. I don't think I'm going to be playing any AJ Dillon, or trying to think if they have other running backs available. I suppose I should bring up fantasy points here.
It should just be Shipley and Dillon.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Just making sure there's not like a fullback I'm forgetting or something. But yeah, I imagine Will Shipley will be part of my lineups. I don't think I'm going to get to any AJ Dillon, but are you getting to Dillon? Maybe that's a mistake. Maybe you're expecting him to potentially get some goal line work at the end. What are you getting as far as the rest of the Eagles running backs?
I'm not getting to Dillon. I will say, and this applies even more so to the Dallas side, but it applies on Philly as well. I do think this is an interesting game, and it's one of the things I really like about Run the Sims is having the ability to customize inputs on the projections and not just like upload your own, which you can also do. But my assumption here, and I think most people's assumption, is that Will Shipley is RB2 and Dillon is not really involved. But if you disagree with that, you can just give Dillon the backup carries. And like if you give an unowned Dillon any backup carries, he's going to start getting into lineups and looking good in these large field tournaments, especially because nobody's going to play him. So with the assumptions that I made that it is Shipley, I'm getting like 12% Shipley. I'm not getting Dillon. But if you disagree with that, then like obviously Dillon would be one of those guys where there is uncertainty here in exactly how the Philadelphia backfield looks. And the payoff would be really nice if you guess it's Dillon and you're right, which another cool thing about Sims, like we always talk about it in the context of like, oh, just what lineups are you entering? You can actually use it. And it's probably the strongest way to use it to like play out different scenarios where let's say you're like me and you think Will Shipley is the RB2, but you realize that that's not 100% and you don't actually know. Like you can just say, okay, well, what's it look like if I make AJ Dillon and Will Shipley split backup carries? Like how good do these AJ Dillon lineups then look? And then you kind of make that decision from there. Like, okay, well, I'm like 90% sure Shipley's the guy, but I'm going to be rich if it's the 10% that, it's AJ Dillon. Like you can make that decision too. Just kind of, it's another way to use Sims. I don't think people really talk about much, but you can simulate out different games and kind of make decisions and potentially get on the spots that like you don't think are the most likely, but you realize are really profitable. So I'm not saying that's the case or going to be my approach with Dillon, but it is something that I think is interesting to point out. But again, my assumption is that Shipley is the RB2 and that the RB2 on Philadelphia is not a super useful role because Barkley is kind of running back number 1 and number 2, and Hurts is getting your goal line work as well.
First of all, love that point about how to use the Sims. That's definitely something that I'm going to have to try out more with Sims. Because I've always used an optimizer for building my lineups. This is the first year that I've tried Sims a little bit in the past, but it's been like here and there, never really got super comfortable with them. So I'm looking forward to getting super comfortable with Run the Sims. But yeah, it is also different as far as I know that I can actually adjust the inputs myself, which will be fun to play with, just looking at like, well, what happens in this scenario? What would I get in this scenario? Like you say, if you split them, I don't think that, like you said, I don't think it's the approach I'm going to take here with AJ Dillon, because I feel like we have pretty good indicators that Will Shipley only played one preseason game. Seemed like they were treating him as though he's the clear RB2. You never know. Like you're right. Like we could be just totally wrong about that. The coaches often have different reasons that they just don't tell us for doing things the way they do. But yeah, I think in this case, I am going to be playing it as though Shipley is the RB2 here. But then again, there is also so I like Shipley on this slate, and you said that you got like 13% or something, which is he's projected for about 7% ownership. So that's kind of a lot relative to the field. So I like him quite a bit for he could have a little bit of a standalone role, just like if they want to, bring down Saquon's carries a little bit because he had $1 billion last year. They want to keep Saquon healthy. They're coming off a Super Bowl year. You never know if they want to limit him just a little bit more than they did last year and give Will Shipley, 5 touches a game or something. But then he also has multiple outs to contingent upside. Obviously, backup running back, you always have the injury out to, if Saquon gets hurt, then Will Shipley's going to get a bunch of carries. But then because it is an 8.5 point spread, I also think that it's a little bit more likely that he just gets some work in the second half if they have a big lead. But then there's also the point of like, well, what if they like Will Shipley enough that they would give those carries to AJ Dillon? They're just like, if we're just milking a lead, why don't we just give it to the running back that we don't care about? Like there is always that possibility, I guess.
Yeah,
but probably not. I don't think I'm going to be playing any AJ Dillon. Are you getting into any in your Sims? Do you see any AJ? Okay.
No, because I mean, I ran with the projections that I made, which don't feature AJ Dillon, but it is something that I think it's probably worth at least like looking at. I think if I were going to do it, I'm more interested in maybe doing it on the Dallas side, because I will admit that I don't know what they're going to do, period.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big time.
Whereas the Philadelphia side, I don't know what they're going to do, but I do know they're going to feed Saquon Barkley, and it's probably Will Shipley's the backup. Dallas, I don't know. So that's the one that probably is more interesting to play around with. And again, just being able to customize those inputs and the way the sim works, because one other an issue that you can run into with when you're using somebody else's Sims is you can upload. Oh well, I'm going to upload a 6-point projection on AJ Dillon, but if on the back end they have AJ Dillon's standard deviation is 0.2 because they project him for nothing, it's still going to tell you AJ Dillon sucks because it's not going to correctly account for that. So that's the nice thing about being able to literally just say, oh no, he's going to run the ball on 15% of their carries. It's going to automatically adjust. But yeah, I'm not planning on doing it with Philly. I think if you were to go that route, Dallas is probably the more interesting use case of just what if everybody's wrong and Blue is RB1, which like I don't think he is, but I don't know.
Look at this professional. What a transition to talk about the Dallas running backs. I guess 4 Dallas running backs are in play to me. Starting with Javonte Williams is the projected starter based on the coach speak. I guess he was listed on the unofficial depth chart as the RB1. But then you also have Miles Sanders coming off a shoulder injury. You've got Jaden Blue suffered a preseason injury that looked like it might sideline him for multiple weeks. Seems like they're both back for this game. They're at least the latest reporting is that both Jaden Blue and Miles Sanders are going to play, but probably, lost a little bit of momentum if they were going to take carries from Javonte Williams. So it looks like Javonte Williams, probably the running back one here, again, listed as the RB1 on the unofficial depth chart. Who knows what that role is going to look like, but projected for about 26% ownership in the flex. In the captain spot, projected for, I don't see ownership here. Let me reset this. See if that does anything. I don't know if you have if you can see projected captain ownership there. Yeah, I'm not seeing it here. Let me look on another resource to see if we're getting, I'm guessing it's going to be 2% or something, but I just want to double check. Yeah, I'm seeing 3% on another site for projected captain ownership. So we'll go with that. It's projected for under 30% total ownership as the, at least in theory, the RB1 there in Dallas, and we don't know to what extent he's going to have a role. But how are you feeling about $5,400 Javonte Williams, or in the captain spot? You getting any there?
Yeah, I'm getting like 1% at captain. I have 22 at flex. I'm with you. Like, I think he's the RB1. I don't know what there's 2 things. 1, we don't actually know that for sure. And 2, we don't know what that means in Dallas. Like, is he, if you put Javonte Williams into like the Rico Dowdle role from last year, he's a fantastic play.
Yeah.
My assumption, and I think most people's assumption, is that you're getting a really nasty timeshare here. I think his rushing prop dropped to like 34.5 or something. And it opened at like 38.5 or 39.5. I have him projected for 37 rushing yards right now. So like I have it projected for Williams to be the lead back, but Miles Sanders to be a relatively significant second back, and for Blue to play. And, so I, as a result, have like 9.5, 10 carries projected to Williams, and then like 7 to Sanders, 3.5 to Blue. And if you do get a breakdown like that, then he's playable because he's relatively cheap and it's a showdown slate. But you're not going to be that excited about it. But again, like if you disagree and you think, well, Blue is a rookie, he's banged up. Like, what if he just like is active but doesn't really play? And then suddenly you're getting either like a 2-man timeshare between Williams and Sanders. Like even that is valuable for Williams, or you're getting an actual workload for Williams and Sanders is just like your backup running back. That obviously would be, if you knew going in that was going to be the case, you're probably playing 2-3 times as much Javonte Williams. So I think there's just so much uncertainty here. I'm getting, like I said, 1% at captain, 22 at flex right now, with the game projected the way that I think it's gonna go. But again, there is a lot of volatility in that projection, in the inputs. Like there's always obviously volatility in the output. If he gets 10 carries, he might run for 100 yards, he might run for 10. But just in the number of carries he's gonna get, like I think that range is anywhere from 5 to 18, I guess, like if he were just a true one.
Yeah, it's one of those. So I'm not expecting him to have a ton of success against the Eagles' run defense. They were over their last 4 games of last year, they were the second best in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed. They allowed the second fewest to opposing running backs. So they were really awesome against the running game last year. Javonte Williams, I don't think is particularly talented, but like you said, like the coach speak over the offseason has been like, I don't have a lean as far as bell cow back versus committee. I don't really care. Like it's not a big, if one of them earns a bell cow role, we'll give it to him, has been kind of the coach speak. Somebody asked him if Jaden Blue could handle 20 to 25 carries a game, and he said, yeah, he could. If he earned it, then sure, he could handle that much. To be clear, I'm not expecting that. That was just like somebody asked him the question, and he was like, yeah, I guess he could. Like it seems like they don't have a lean as far as how they want to use the back. So you'll get some coaches that are like, I like to have a running back by committee, or I like to have a lead back. They're just like, yeah, I don't know. We'll just do, we'll see what works, and we'll do that. So
they're looking at it saying like, please God, someone take this job.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation here. But one positive for Javonte Williams, I'll say, is at least early in the offseason, they were talking a lot about how running backs need to be able to catch the ball. Like, it's important to them to have running backs who are capable of receiving, which is really, impactful on a PPR site. Running back targets tend to be shorter, so then they're more likely to catch it. They're going to have a higher catch percentage. So if they do get behind and they want to use the running back in the passing game, that can be really impactful, especially with all of these running backs being relatively inexpensive. So ultimately, so you're a little bit underweight to the field on Javonte Williams. That is my lean, just because it is such a tough matchup, but he does have some things going for him, being that they want to pass it to their running backs. They've named him as the RB1 at least. The other two that they're going to use are both coming off injuries, so he does have some things. And then, of course, if they get down to the goal line, maybe he gets carries, and that just happens randomly, where there's a pass interference in the end zone and then you get it at the 1 yard line. So there are a lot of positives there, but I do think ultimately I'm probably with you on being a bit underweight on Javonte Williams and this unknown situation.
And to your point too, with the receiving, not saying this is going to carry over. Like, I'm not projecting it this way. It's a different team, and it was probably unsustainable anyway. But just one of the things that like stood out the most to me as I've been going through games and projecting stuff. Javonte Williams had 0.25 targets per route run last season. To put that in context, on Denver, Cortland Sutton was at 0.26. Like, Javonte Williams was like actually getting targets too, which again, completely different offense. Obviously, it's not carrying over to this year, but like, he's not somebody. Like, it stood out to me because he's not somebody that I think of, because like you said, I don't think he's super talented. He's not somebody that I think of that I never assume I'm going to see a stat from Javonte Williams that is like, oh, wow, that is like really high or really impressive. Like, I just assume they're all going to be like league average across the board.
This is a bonus for doing the show with you this year. I mean, last year I just assumed that you knew nothing at all times. I was like, Adam doesn't know shit. But this year you're digging deep in. You're doing the projections for Run the Sims. So you probably are looking at this stuff a lot closer than I am outside of Showdown sites. So yeah, you're going to be prepared this year.
Yeah, it was actually something I'm excited about because I've never been in the weeds for projections for a site before. So like, obviously it's a lot of work, and I'm going to be more annoyed now when I get stuff wrong, because it's not just like my money. But I'm actually looking forward to it because I think it's something that'll make me a lot better at DFS. Like, I think DFS, one of the frustrating things about DFS is like, obviously you can always improve, but like, it's not like poker. Like, you kind of, I think, hit a cap where like, it's like, okay, like I'm probably close to as good as I can be with like my knowledge. But this is something that like I've never done a lot of before. So I think it'll probably make me a lot better.
Expanding your knowledge. Yeah, that'll help. Yeah, no, that is fun that you're digging into that kind of stuff. Having to do the projection yourself, like, you're kind of required to like take a really deep look at this stuff. So that'll be fun for the show. Obviously joking for anybody who's listening, saying that Adam didn't know shit last year, but still like gonna be more knowledgeable this year. All right. So behind him, so we've got, again, Miles Sanders coming off of a shoulder injury. He kind of missed a lot of the past month of practice, but he is expected to play in this game. Miles Sanders is projected for 4% captain ownership. No, sorry, 1% captain ownership. And where is he? I'll find him. There he is. 15% ownership in the flex. He's only 4K, so he's a little intriguing if you do think that there's uncertainty there. How much are you getting to $4,000 Miles Sanders?
I have 1% at captain and 9% at flex right now. He's another one, like, really, I think everything we were saying about Javonte Williams kind of in some ways even applies more so to Miles Sanders, because like, if blue is not used like at all, then obviously that's good for Williams, but it really would lock in Sanders as like a quality value at 4K as well. Whereas if it is like a true three-way split in the backfield, yeah, 4K is cheap, but it's not nothing. And you're talking about a running back that probably isn't going to catch like a ton of passes. Like, you assume that role is going to Williams or Blue, because he's certainly somebody that can do that as well. So it's kind of like he's probably going to get caught by like some random cheap guy that catches 2 passes. But also, like, he could potentially get goal line work. Like we saw, I mean, you just have to go back to last season to find the last time that Miles Sanders was a pain in the ass around the goal line. I think it kind of gets overlooked because he kept getting hurt and Hubbard had such a good year. But there were absolutely weeks last year that I distinctly remember from having a lot of Hubbard in DFS and then just watching Miles Sanders come in and take goal line carries away from him.
Yeah.
it's very live to happen here.
Yeah. As Steven points out, 4,000, he's like in the same range as like kickers and defenses, who are going to project better at the very least. So he needs a touchdown, I think, probably to outscore the kickers. But so you've got about 10%. That's slightly under the field. Seems fine to me.
And then for what it's worth, we have him projected for 0.1 touchdown. So like, obviously it's not exactly how it works. That doesn't mean he's scoring a touchdown 10% of the time necessarily, but like,
right.
If you call it around 10% of the time, that would make sense for 10% exposure.
And then Jaden Blue, 9% flex ownership, about 1% captain ownership. So kind of similar ownership to Miles Sanders. Again, he's different than the other running backs in that he probably has the most juice of the 3 running backs, but he's also a rookie coming off of an ankle injury in the preseason. Who knows how healthy he is right now? It's very, very uncertain situation for Jaden Blue. And he's also, what was his price tag?
5K.
Oh, he's 5K. He's more expensive than Miles Sanders. So he's not going to have a ton of ownership. So he's got that going for him. What are you doing with Jaden Blue?
I'm not getting to him. Like he's basically the same price as Javonte Williams.
Right.
So, but this is again, like really, and I mean, it's one of the more interesting things about Showdown, obviously, is, like on a main slate, when you get a spot like this, you just kind of can ignore it and probably not gonna have to worry about it too much. But here it's like, I think Javonte Williams is the guy. So does everybody else. Blue, in theory, can catch passes, like can make big plays. So if he plays, 5K is just like such a weird price tag where if he plays the role that I think and that most people think he's going to play, then it's completely unappealing and you have no interest in him. But it's a low enough price tag where his role doesn't have to be that big for him to actually be a good play. Like, it's not like he's 8K and you're saying, well, not only does he need to play, but he needs to actually be the number 1 running back for this to matter. If he's ahead of Miles Sanders, he's at least in play at 5K.
Oh, yeah.
Much less Javonte Williams. So right now I don't have him, and I probably won't. Like, I don't think I'm going to be able to get a projection high enough on him. But it's not. There's enough volatility here, and it's a cheap enough price tag where if you are somebody that just thinks he's going to just come right out of the gate and they're going to play him ahead of Sanders or something like that, he's not going to be popular.
And he does have the most juice. So again, like Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, it's tough to project, to like expect one play for them to like, make their salary on one play. Whereas Jaden Blue may be a little bit more likely to just have like a 60-yard touchdown, like on limited carries. So I think he'd be more likely than the others to be able to get there on limited carries. But I'm with you in that I'll probably have single digit ownership there. I might have high single digit ownership just to lean into the volatility on a Showdown slate. But yeah, it's a little bit tough on, should be a committee, and coming off the injury, I would not expect him to be, a big part of that committee. I'd expect him to be kind of the third or at the very least second. But yeah, I think, sort of interesting from the perspective of he's different than the other running backs, has a little bit more juice, could break off a splash play a little bit easier, but expensive relative to his role. Tough to get there.
From just like a medium projection standpoint, the way I have him right now, you're talking about a 5K player projected for 3.5 carries and half a catch.
Yeah.
That's obviously not. But again, that's where, the difference between input volatility and output volatility. If you're confident in the inputs there's really not enough variance in the world that you're ever going to want to play the 3.5 carry, half a catch guy at 5K, no matter what his ownership is. But when you account for, not only the range of outcomes around the rushing yards per carry, yards per catch, but the volatility in, is that 3.5 actually 8 carries, and is that half a catch actually 2.5? That's where it becomes interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say neither Sanders nor Blue for me at captain. I think I might have, I'll probably have, a couple percent of Javonte Williams at captain, just in case he does have a bigger role than we're expecting and get some random touchdowns and you need the price savings. But I think that's probably where I end up falling, is I probably don't play Blue or Sanders at captain. The fourth running back to talk about on the Cowboys is Hunter Lepke, who is, sounds like you're getting some, the fullback. He's sort of interesting. He feels like a trap. He's always been a trap in Showdown slates, but maybe he's the trap. Maybe it'll work this time, because the coaches have been really bullish on him all offseason. They've talked about him, he's a dog, just like the way they talk about him is like they really love Hunter Lipke. They've been trying him out at different positions, trying him out a little bit at tight end, making sure that he's ready to try to fill a bunch of different roles. It's also like totally new running back room. So last year he had like a 6.7% rush rate. Took 6.7% of the teams inside the 5 carries last year, as opposed to just 2.9% of their carries overall. So they were a little bit more inclined to use him inside the 5-yard line, which would make sense for the fullback. Like he would make sense as the goal line back. So like, who knows with the new running backs, maybe they like him better as the goal line back. I don't know. They had Rico Dowdle last year, so that doesn't make a ton of sense, but you never know. But they've been really bullish on him. They might give him some goal line carries. And we don't have a ton of great cheap options here. He's 400. He doesn't have a ton of competition there. So pretty appealing to me. Sounds like you're getting to some Hunter Lipke.
Yeah, I think the last thing you said is the strongest point, especially with these two teams where you do have so many like star players. The mid-range guys are not super cheap. Like Shipley is what, 2K? Sanders is 4K, Blue is 5K. But then you even go down to like, Tolbert's 3,400, Turpin is 2,800, Schoonmaker is 1,600. Like there's no sub 1K guys other than Lepke, I don't think, that are like even options. So if you get that game where, Lamb scores twice and Barkley scores 3 times and whatever, just some shootout where the guys that are expected to score, do all of the scoring or most of the scoring, then you can kind of just fall into that, like, 0 points is in the optimal lineup, or, half a point's in the optimal lineup or whatever. And there's just no real alternatives around it. So yeah, like I'm getting the 14% right now. It's a lot in the sense of like, he's probably not going to score fantasy points, but it's not a lot in the sense of like my night's ruined if Hunter Lepke doesn't do anything. And again, like having projected for 3 rushing for less than 1 carry, less than 1 catch, like 0.7 of a carry, 0.4 of a reception, 3 rushing yards, 4 receiving yards. So basically projected for nothing and showing up 14% of the time. So it's sort of like the inverse of Barkley, where, I obviously don't want to play Hunter Lepke, but I'm also projecting him to do nothing and he's showing up 14% of the time. So I'm not going to like double count it and say like, oh yeah, but this guy's not going to do anything.
Right. You obviously need him to do something so that you don't duplicate a million times with all the other zeros. You need him to score at least like half a fantasy point, like you said. But yeah, he's certainly like, he's got outs. He's got outs to score some fantasy points in a weak backfield. And who knows, like they could struggle early and then just be like, all right, what can we try here to try to gain some yardage on the ground against the Eagles?
I mean, I know from experience, like what all of the, this could happen arguments are, and I can also tell you none of them are going to happen. But
oh yeah, it's just going to be CeeDee Lamb and it's going to be George Pickens and it's going to be, but it could happen. It could happen. Worth it to try at least. I don't think there are any other running backs we need to.
Span forward is 200, so that's
that's true. All right, then let's move on to receivers. Start with the Eagles side. We've got some studs across the board at receiver here. So on the Eagles side, we obviously have AJ Brown, we've got Devonta Smith, and then it's gross after that. We had Jahan Dotson last year. We'll have him again. Let's start with the top. So AJ Brown projected for, not seeing ownership here, in the flex. Try this again. If I don't see it here, okay. 11% ownership at captain for AJ Brown and 33.5% in the flex. So we're looking at under 50% total ownership on AJ Brown. How much Brown are you getting to?
Getting 37% at flex, getting 10 at captain. I didn't hear what numbers you said, but
yeah, I think I said 11% at captain.
Yeah. But yeah, obviously happy with that. For a second, I didn't realize I had filtered what I was looking at by Dallas, and I was just like, oh shit, I'm not getting any AJ Brown at flex. But yeah, I'm getting to him. I think we're a little below market on receiving yards, but nothing too crazy. Again, that just goes with being, a pass attempt and a half under. But still clearly looks very good. He's AJ Brown. He has a ton of touchdown equity, as far as receivers go. So yeah, he's my tied for third highest owned captain with Devontae, and 4th highest owned flex behind the quarterbacks in Barkley.
Yeah, just a strong play. What do you have? A 27% target share. 29.7% target share last year. And last year they didn't throw a ton because they just had so much success on the ground. And then when you're just crushing teams the way they were last year, you don't really have to. If the Cowboys can keep this game closer, you'd imagine they'll throw a little bit more, and that 30% target share is huge for AJ Brown. So yeah, I like getting into some there, but it's not like a huge stand I'm taking. Like you said, feels reasonable. We also have Devonta Smith here, projected for 26% ownership in the flex and 5% ownership at captain. I want to hear your take. I like Devonta Smith quite a bit. I'm curious if you are getting to him as much as I am.
Yeah, he's tied with AJ Brown. 10% of my lineups at captain. I have 29% at flex. I think he looks pretty good at 8,400. Like, you're getting a little bit of a discount off AJ Brown, and it's one of those, like, the Philly receivers, I think, are one of those kind of tricky spots where, like AJ Brown is the one, obviously, but like Devonta Smith is still really, really good, and you're just going to have Devonta Smith games, kind of like the Bengals light, sort of, I guess, where, Jamar Chase is the one, but like T Higgins is a monster also. And you're just going to have games where T Higgins is better than Jamar Chase. You're going to have games where Devonta Smith is better than AJ Brown. It's certainly not surprising when that happens. There's a lot of teams in the league where, even the Cowboys on the other side, George Pickens is going to have a lot of very good games. You're always going to be at least somewhat surprised when George Pickens has a better game than CeeDee Lamb. More so, I think, than you are when Devonta Smith has a better game than AJ Brown.
Yeah, and hang on. I believe he has a great matchup in the fantasy points wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, also with Deron Bland. So that was part of my reasoning for liking Devonta Smith is I think it's a good schematic matchup for him, and then strong individual matchup as well. So as we're looking at lower ownership, yeah, pretty strong matchup here for Devonta Smith. So as we're looking at lower ownership, willing to break the tie in favor of the guy who's getting lower ownership. He's cheaper and he has a great matchup. So I'm pretty into it. So you're over the field both at flex and at captain. So glad that we're aligned. Maybe not even for the same reasons, but I think he's a really strong play here at low ownership. And then we have after there, I mean, it's gross. It's gross behind those two for the Eagles. We've got Jahan Dotson was the wide receiver 3 last year. I guess he's theoretically that as this year again, 3,200 projected for 3.2 fantasy points at fantasy points. We've got John Mechie is there now, but he's 3,800. Maybe he takes over that role from Jahan Dotson. I don't know. What are you doing with the other Eagles receivers again, Tenny?
Yeah, I have 10% Dotson at flex, which is fine. He can, catch a pass in the end zone. But obviously not anything I want to go crazy with. And like you said, we don't know exactly how that route share is going to break down anyway. I projected Dotson as the third receiver, but I did involve Mechie. And there is, some volatility there where I did give Dotson the bulk of the routes. Mechie was acquired relatively late in preseason. We don't know for sure, like, if he ever surpasses Dotson. But even if he does eventually, it's, I think, reasonably likely that it's Dotson's job for now. But, also obviously being the third receiving option, the third wide receiver option, you're really the fourth option, not including Barkley. Like, you're behind Brown, right, Devontae, Goddard, and then you have Barkley. And then when you think about touchdown equity, you also have Hurts. It's not a very valuable role for Dotson, even if he is the clear wide receiver 3. So showing up 10% of the time for me, again, he's cheap enough. If he catches a pass in the end zone, you're in decent shape. So I have a little bit, but not a ton of confidence in his role, even less confidence in what he actually is going to do.
Yeah, I think he scored a touchdown maybe in the playoffs last year, and it was like maybe one of his only, if not his only touchdown of the season. It was one of few. Like, he just did not have much of a role last year. He is listed as a starting receiver on the Eagles depth chart at the very least, so he seems to have the role as a wide receiver 3 for now. But yeah, I think it's basically like, what are his odds of scoring a touchdown? Because I don't think he's going to be optimal. Even at 3,200, I don't think without scoring a touchdown, it's pretty unlikely that Jahan Dotson ends up optimal. So whatever you think his odds are of scoring a touchdown and having at least like 4 points in addition to it, I think those are his odds of being optimal, which is, so you have about 10%, project for about 7% ownership. So you actually are a little bit over the field there. I don't think I will be. I think there are other players I'd rather take shots on there, but I probably won't be too far under the field either. It's not
I
a
will say
huge
I'm
stand.
very, very flat on guys in that range too. So like
Yeah.
I have 10% of him. I have 10% of a lot of guys priced in there.
Okay.
10,
Uh,
give or take.
do you have any of Mechie?
No, I don't. I don't think I will.
Yeah, I mean and we also we don't know who's going to be inactive. Like there's a chance John Mechie is inactive. He's also 3,800. He's more
Right.
expensive than Jahan Dotson. Not expected to start. Projected for 4% ownership, so that's sort of appealing. But yeah,
But at
that's
the same
not
time, like it's kind of not because I think that's one of those kind of trappy ownership spots too, where like, yeah, he's 4% owned, but every John Mechie, like all the reasonable John Mechie lineups are going to be played. So like his dupe rate is probably actually higher than if you just take, projected ownership times the 6 spots in your lineup. Um, yeah, I think there's a good chance that you kind of run into the thing that you do when you play like value captains, for example. You say, "Oh, this guy's 1% owned the captain. I'm going to be unique," and then it's like, "Well, no, it's duped 100 times because there's two
sure.
possible lineups you can play with this guy at captain." I think you probably run into that a little bit with Mechie. The fact that he is 3,800 helps some because like people will play Turpin over him, they'll play Dotson over him, etc. But
Right.
I think it's still just there's only so many times because if you're playing John Mechie, it's not because like or probably not because you actually think John Mechie is just like going to have some breakout game. You're playing him because you're in a position where like you need somebody in that price range and you're saying, "Oh, well, he's only 4% owned," but like everybody is doing that that's playing
Sure.
John Mechie. So like the lineups are going to be there's not going to be that many different lineups that have John Mechie.
So, I mean, if you leave some salary on the table, maybe more likely because I mean, you've got Miles Sanders just 200 more
Yeah.
expensive. So, like, if you use the full salary cap, I would imagine it's just people who are like, well, can't afford Miles Sanders. Maybe I'll play John Mechie
Yeah.
instead.
I
Maybe if
think
you
there's
if
some
you lose
spots
a
though
little
where
salary,
like he might be this is just a weird one though, and this actually I think probably applies to Jet on Blue as well. Where spending more salary might or like salary might just not really be correlated because like Turpin's cheaper, Dotson's cheaper, they project better. So like I think there's gonna just be I would still expect that you have higher dupes on the lineup that like you have 3,800 left, but you play Dotson or you play Turpin. I would still expect that lineup to be duped more than the Mechie one, even though the Mechie one in that case uses 50K or 49.9
right?
or whatever.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah, I mean, not particularly appealing to me. I guess
Yeah,
is the
none
final
of this is
takeaway.
super actionable because probably
Yeah,
just don't play John Mechie, but
yeah,
it is
right.
interesting to think about.
Yeah, it is. It is. All right, we'll move on to the Cowboys side. I do want to remind people, since we've got some new people in here, please do like the video if you haven't done so. Helps out quite a bit. I am trying to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. So if you're not already subscribed, would appreciate it if you would. I'm going to be doing Showdown content every Monday, Thursday, Sunday. I'll actually be here tomorrow before lock for the Friday night football slate as well. So if you want to catch all that, make sure you subscribe and you can hit that little notification bell if you want to get alerts when I go live. And then also want to shout out, if you're not already subscribed to Run the Sims, just go to Run the Sims. I think it's runthesims.com/subscribe. If you use promo code Neil, you can get 10% off your first payment at Run the Sims. You can also find the link in the description of this video if you want to check that out. We'll be looking at it a little bit later. But first, let's talk about the Cowboys receiver side. So we'll start with CeeDee Lamb at the top, returning as the still the top receiver there in Dallas, projected for 36% flex ownership, 10% captain ownership. So under 50% total ownership on CeeDee Lamb. How much are you getting to him in the captain spot and overall?
Getting 33% at flex, getting 8 at captain. So actually it's
Okay,
41%
little
aggregate.
underweight on
Yeah.
both.
Um yeah, I mean it's another one of those guys where like obviously I want as much as I can get to. But there are, a lot of alternatives on the slate also. But obviously, I think Lamb looks great. I think they're going to probably need to throw a lot. I think, I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show, one of the things that I'll be just kind of curious to see from like a projection standpoint early in the season is, kind of trying to gauge the trade-off between what does George Pickens do to CeeDee Lamb's target share and what does George Pickens do to CeeDee Lamb's efficiency.
Yeah.
That's always, I think, one of the more difficult things. It's very easy to say, oh, well, I don't remember who their wide receiver 2 was last year, but now it's George Pickens.
Yeah, I don't either. Wait, who was it?
Right. I think it was Tolbert. Like,
Did they have Brandon Cooks? Was he there last year?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
But like he's never healthy.
Yeah.
But either way, like it wasn't, a George Pickens type target. So, it's very easy to be like, oh, well, CeeDee Lamb's target share comes down. But like if he is getting more single coverage and, he's open more, then, he's doing more damage after the catch potentially. So, it's that trade-off's always difficult. So I kind of view it as like probably sort of like a neutral thing. CeeDee Lamb is still just one of the best wide receivers anytime he's playing. But at the same time, like obviously he's expensive and he's popular. So not really like I wouldn't be upset if I was getting more of him than AJ Brown or Dak. And I'm not upset that I'm getting a little bit more of those guys than him. Like they're all just kind of in that same bucket to me when you factor in price.
Yep. Tougher matchup, but then also should be playing from behind. Yeah, I'm with you. It's like pros and cons to all sides. I will say 19 PPR fantasy points per game over the first 9 games of last year with Dak Prescott. Then Dak got hurt, 14.6 the rest of the way. So good for him to have Dak Prescott back. Now, the Eagles defense was pretty middling over the end of the season as far as schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Then they released cornerbacks James Bradbury and Darius Slay. So it's a little bit of upheaval in the pass defense for the Eagles. Individual matchup with Cooper DeJean is slightly below average for CeeDee Lamb. We're also not expecting shadow coverage, so I don't think it's anything to factor in at all. And then, like you said, George Pickens, the new receiver in town in Dallas, now playing with the best the best quarterback he's had in his career. George Pickens projected for 5%, just under 5% captain ownership and 25% flex ownership. Pretty intriguing to me. I've heard some talk about this not being the best schematic matchup for George Pickens, but at sub 30% ownership, I'm kind of intrigued. What are you doing with George Pickens?
Getting to him actually pretty similarly to CeeDee Lamb, 31% at flex, 8%, which is identical at captain.
Okay.
And I
So
mean,
you're
when you
over
look
the
at the
field.
pricing
Yeah.
discount, I think it makes sense. He's $2,800 less than Lamb, not to take anything away from Lamb or to, overhype Pickens, but like I kind of said it when we were talking about Philly, like you're more surprised if Pickens outscores Lamb than if Smith outscores Brown, but not by like a crazy amount. Like Pickens Lamb is still certainly one of those wide receiver pairings where like it's not an absolute fluke if it's just a Pickens game over a Lamb game. Like he's very talented, obviously. He's in a good spot now. He's somebody that absolutely, talking about that trade-off that we were talking about, with regard to Lamb, he's somebody that you absolutely could just get. Like the joke about him when he was on Pittsburgh was like, yeah, he's a great receiver, but like, has the guy gotten open once in his entire career? I expect he'll have an easier time getting open with CeeDee Lamb on the other side of the field.
Yeah, exactly. And he also got better. Like his rookie year was like he never the like book on him was he couldn't get open at all, like had zero separation, but then he just won the jump balls. And then he got better from that perspective over time.
Like, I don't know that I've ever seen George Pickens catch a ball that wasn't a highlight reel catch in double coverage.
Yep. All right. And then behind them we have some intriguing lower owned options as the wide receiver 3-4. So we have Kevontae Turpin getting the next most ownership at the wide receiver spot, projected for 21% ownership. Man, that's high. It's gone up 21% flex ownership for Kevontae Turpin and 3% captain ownership. Which, man, that affects what I want to do a little bit, because I've been like super excited to play Kevontae Turpin on the showdown slate. 24% ownership now is getting a little bit tough there. What are you getting to with Kevontae Turpin?
Not getting a lot. So I have like 10% of him. And I think this kind of goes hand in hand with like why I have 14% Lepke, why I have 10% Dotson, I have 10% Calcaterra that we hadn't mentioned yet. Around 10% Sanders, 7% Schoonmaker. I think that's kind of the value guy that I am taking some exposure from and kind of just reallocating it. I think there's also volatility here where I've seen him projected a little bit higher other places than I have him right now. I think Tolbert is... I expect Tolbert to be ahead of him in terms of, route participation. I think that you'll get, schemed targets for Turpin like you usually do. So, he'll still get receptions, and obviously he's a big play threat, but I'm viewing it, and certainly something I could be wrong on, but I'm viewing it as he's still more of like the gadget guy than the actual go out there for 60% of passing plays and run routes guy. And if, not to say that he can't get there at that price, because he obviously can, but if the field is just going to say like, oh yeah, this is the guy that we're taking our stand on and he's going to be 25% owned, that is a spot to me, kind of like with Barkley, where certainly you can make good Saquon Barkley captain lineups, clearly, but I'm fine sort of just saying like, okay, well, I'm just going to spread that out to more CeeDee Lamb and Pickens and Devontae, whatever. I think this is a spot that probably is profitable, at least the way I have it projected, to just spread out, kind of just say like, all right, maybe Turpin is favored individually against all of these guys, but collectively the field of Dotson, Calcaterra, whoever, all the guys in that range is probably ahead of Turpin because it's still, I think, the number 4 receiver on Dallas.
Yeah, so I'm going back and forth. So I think that I agree with you, unfortunately, because Turpin's a guy that I've been playing a lot of in best ball, guy that I'm sort of excited about this year. So I'll give the bull case for Turpin, with the caveat that I think I'm probably with you that I end up a little bit underweight now that he's up to 24% total projected ownership, and there are other players that I could spread that out to. But the bull case is he could be Marvin Mims, I think, basically like late season Marvin Mims from last year. The way they've been using him in practice and talking about him has been, they've been giving him carries like in practice, and they've been talking about him like he's a dynamic guy, similar to Lipke, where like we want to try him different spots, we want him to be prepared, and they've actually been like giving him those carries in practice. So I think that I think you're right that he's not like a full route participation type player, but he could be just like the Cowboys version of late season Marvin Mims from last year, where it's like he gets those gadgety looks, shorter looks like a running back, just to get him the ball and see what he can do with the ball in his hands. So those are easier to catch. And then he might get some carries as well. And now they're playing the Eagles, which has really stout run defense, which might mean that they're more inclined then to go to the gadgety stuff. Like they, it's on the one hand, it's like the tough matchup, but on the other hand, like they might not be able to do their classic run game. So that could lead to them being like, all right, let's try this thing, this thing we've been practicing with Cavante Turpin. So it could happen there for Turpin. But then like that's something I love if you were like 8% owned overall. Once you get to 24%, that's a tough bet to make, because like you said before, it's like, yeah, all these things could happen, but then they're not going to happen most likely. And that is true of Turpin. It's like, yeah, maybe he'll get a carry or two. Like I'm bullish that he could get, like, what if he does get 4 carries in a game or something like that? But like that's still unlikely. It's less likely to happen, less than 50% likely to happen. So at the end of the day, like I loved him in best ball, but like for one DFS slate, if people are going to be making the assumption that they are going to use him that way in this game, I probably would want to bet against it. So I think I come down on, yeah, if he ends up 24%, I will be underweight that. I'll have some and like hope that he doesn't come in as high owned. So I'll be over 10% overall on Cavante Turpin. But yeah, that's steep ownership there.
So 2 things for me too. So one, actually, I just was double checking, and apparently I have been projected a lot more in line with the industry than I thought, which just makes me feel better like about the fact that I only have 10%, because it just means that stand is less based on my opinion,
right?
Like, my divergent opinion.
Yeah.
But also one thing to mention with Turpin that I think people sort of get trapped into sometimes, not to say that he's not a big play guy, but he is somebody that is like the more routes he runs, not the less raw targets he's going to get, but like the less
targets per route run. Yeah.
Like he was like, I haven't projected as like a 22% target per route run guy. If he just becomes the wide receiver 3 and he's on the field 60% of the time, like that is plummeting. So that's something too, where like you do want to be careful with how you're projecting him. Like if you think that he is more involved, you don't want to just like,
don't extrapolate the
exactly.
targets per route run. Yeah.
So like you don't have to project a lot of participation for him to still be getting a pretty good fantasy projection, because when he's on the field, he's getting the ball.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. If he does run more routes, he's probably going to lose some of that target share. And like, yeah, it's better for him overall if he's more involved, getting more opportunities. But like, yeah, you cannot extrapolate that he's going to continue with the same efficiency the more he gets. If he is involved in the running game, like they are suggesting, I think that is more bullish. Like you just add that on where he's still doing the limited routes, maybe maintains the efficiency on his limited route participation and it has that big play ability. And then you add in a few more carries that are just opportunities for him to break off big plays. That's obviously a positive. It's just, I think that's something that we are all kind of wish casting. And I think it is a possibility, to be clear. Like I was planning on being super bullish on him on this show. It's just once you factor in how much ownership he's getting, then it becomes an issue. All right, we need to move along because Adam has a hard out here. So let's and then Jalen Tolbert. You mentioned Jalen Tolbert is one that I think I am going to be pretty bullish on, all things considered. So on the unofficial depth chart, Tolbert and Turpin both listed in wide receiver 3. Tolbert getting 0.39% captain ownership and then 9% flex ownership. So that is much more palatable ownership on Tolbert. How much you get in there?
I just lost my lineups. I think I had 19-20% at flex. I had 7% at captain. That I didn't hear what you said for the captain projection, but that had stood out sort of
0.4% at captain.
Yeah, so a little bit over there. Yeah, I mean, I projected him to be the third receiver, which, obviously isn't super valuable here when, again, you have Lamb, you have Pickens, they're dominating targets, but you also have Ferguson, who's probably getting more targets, but he's also cheap. The path to him being useful certainly isn't that crazy. Having projected for like 2.5 catches. So, yeah, like I'm not super confident in him, but I don't mind, getting a little bit over the field, especially if the field's going to not really be that interested in him.
Yeah, if the field is going to treat him like he's fourth in line, then yeah, I'll probably be overweight to Tolbert slightly. Any other Cowboys receivers you're getting to?
No. Keep an eye on. Right now, they don't have one, but it's expected to, I think, be Flournoy.
Oh yeah,
recalled.
Okay. All right, then we will move on to tight ends.
Look at me knowing practice squad guys now.
Yeah, what is this all about? This is crazy. Tight ends, we'll start with the Cowboy side. So Jake Ferguson took a pretty big dip last year in production. Again, like CeeDee Lamb, much better with Dak out there. And then when Dak was hurt, he averaged like 6 PPR fantasy points per game the second half of the season. All the coach speak is we're expecting him to bounce back. We think last year was a fluke. We're expecting him to bounce back to the production from 2023. So some positives there for Jake Ferguson. But what are you, how much Ferguson are you getting to? Oh, and I guess I should give the ownership here. Ferguson in the flex projected for 22.5% ownership. At captain projected for 3% ownership. So not a ton of ownership there, and he's pretty cheap. What are you getting there?
Yeah, I'm only getting 13 in flex. I'm getting like 2 or 3 at captain. I wouldn't be upset if I got more. Like I think that $5,200 price tag is reasonable, but at the same time, I think that like he's close enough in projection and ownership that in a lot of cases, I'm just preferring to get to $3,400 Tolbert, for example, save salary, upgrade elsewhere because there's always going to be ways to upgrade on this slate with how many good players there are at the top. But yeah, like he's the perfect example, I think, of I don't think you should like overstate last year too much and just say like, oh, this guy that looked like he was going to be a really solid, tight end for years to come is actually terrible. But at the same time, like he's going to be inconsistent on this offense. He's on an offense, that should be throwing a lot and should score points, which is good. But he's competing with Lamb and Pickens, and any given game that leaves you open to just not being very involved. But I think he looks fine here. I think the ownership is fine. I'm a little below it.
Okay, I do just like to look at schedule adjusted fantasy points per game at the tight end position, just because it is so specific, and looks like it is a tough matchup with the Eagles at the tight end position as of last year. Of course, year over year, defenses change a lot, so not as valuable as it will be later in the year. And then Dallas, I mean, I guess we should talk about any other, you get into any like Brevin, Spam, Ford, any of the other tight ends there on the Cowboys?
I'm not getting to Span Ford. I do think, at 200, if like you don't want 14% Lepke and you want to play 7% of both, whatever, it's obviously that kind of play. I do have like 7% Schoonmaker. Still, you're just hoping he like catches a pass or preferably catches a pass falling into the end zone. I also have 2% Kylan Granson from the Eagle side, basically your Span Ford of the Eagles. If you wanted to make that Span Ford, obviously it's the same thing. But no, there's nothing like interesting to say about those guys. I don't think it's a 1-game slate, and they are breathing people that probably will step on the field at least once.
Could score a touchdown at some point.
Yeah, they're big.
Yeah, they're big, so they could score touchdowns. Dallas Goedert projected for 3% ownership in the captain spot, projected for 20% ownership in the flex. He is pretty expensive, 6,400, like clearly too expensive for his role. But does the ownership offset that for you? How much are you getting to of Dallas Goedert?
Yeah, I actually have some. I have 5% at captain. I have 19% at flex.
Yeah, that's.
I,
I mean,
I don't love I don't love the price tag. Like, I would obviously rather, in terms of just if I were to click, just click somebody, I would rather just save $1,200 and go to Ferguson. I think they're very comparable plays, but he's showing up for me a bit more, which also I'm fine with. Like, there's obvious upside there. You know, I think he's very similar to Ferguson in that, like, he's talented. He's on a good offense. He also is on an offense that has a lot of mouths to feed. So, game to game, you can't count on consistent production.
yeah, he's not going to be the guy that often, but it'll hit a few times this year and could be in this one. But yeah, probably not going to be a focal point, but I probably won't be that far behind the field. And my guess I end up a little bit underweight to the field. Sounds like you are as well, because he's getting some ownership. And then you already mentioned the backups, so we can skip those tight ends. And then let's move on to defenses and kickers. We can just kind of talk about them as a whole, unless you are getting to a ton of the defenses and kickers. And I'll just go over the ownership here. So in the flex, we have Brandon Aubrey, 19% projected ownership. Eagles defense, 20% projected ownership. Jake Elliott, 17% projected ownership. Cowboys defense, 15%. So kind of a thin band there as how much people are playing the kickers and defenses. How much are you getting to when you get into any of the kickers or defenses in the captain spot?
25% Aubrey, 21% Elliott, 15 Eagles, 11 Cowboys.
Okay.
So nothing, too crazy or off there. At captain, I have 3% Eagles, 3% Elliott, 1% Aubrey, 0 Cowboys.
And it's projected ownership between 1% and 2% for all of the kickers and defenses here. Eagles defense up at 2% is the highest, but everybody, kind of in a thin band there as far as projected ownership. The lowest is Jake Elliott at 1.03%. I honestly, I never have great takes for the defense kickers. I think I'll probably be about in line with the field. That's kind of usually my goal with defense and kickers. It's so random. I mean, there are some slates where I'm like, I really want to lean into the defenses or the kickers. This isn't one. It's one where it's just like I'll probably try to essentially match the field and make my stands elsewhere. And it sounds like that's so you're higher on the kickers, lower on the defenses where you're getting the sims.
Yeah, by a little bit. Which I think makes sense.
High scoring game we're expecting.
Yeah.
And I'll just
one thing I guess I will point out, even though I'm not getting a ton of them, but reminder that defensive fantasy production is not really super correlated with playing good defense, or more so like with preventing points. Having, even if this is likely to be a high scoring game, like the Eagles going up against a Cowboys team that is probably going to drop back and pass 35 to 40 times, even if they give up some points, it creates upside when you're going up against a pass heavy team, even if it's a good offense.
Yeah. So, Dak Prescott can throw for 4 touchdowns and 2 pick sixes, in which case you're going to want both Dak Prescott and the opposing defense, because the quarterback only loses 1 point per interception. Yeah, I always like to, that's something that the field has always underutilized a little bit, the defenses against opposing quarterback or opposing players in general. So something I like to lean into in Showdown. I think that probably the field is getting better over time as more are using sims, but that is worth pointing out that you can play the defense. I don't
think I have that too much, and I think it's a good idea.
You don't have the defense against quarterback?
I don't have Dak captain. Dak captain Eagles I don't have.
Okay.
I didn't look at flex.
And then questions and lineups at the end. So we've only got about 10 minutes left here, but I did want to look at run the sims just briefly here. And I'm gonna show people so how I think this works. And you can kind of watch me, Adam, and see if you think I'm doing this wrong. But I'm gonna reset everything. We've got pro mode on. I think there are like some fewer settings if you don't have pro mode, which is, I think you have to pay more to have pro mode. So maybe a couple extra settings here. But I think everything starts with, and Adam pointed out, so you got all the players listed here, Cowboys first, and then the Eagles. And in Run the Sims, by the way, use promo code Neil to get 10% off your first payment. you can adjust the market share. So rushing market share, rushing touchdown market share, receiving market share, receiving touchdown market share, catch rate for all the receivers. These are all things that you can adjust. You can adjust the pace of the game that you're expecting. You can adjust the number of points you expect each team to score. You can see all the things. So it's pretty cool that you can, if you have strong opinions about how the game is going to play out, you can just go in and tell it, this is how I think the game is going to play out. You do, it has, you can see Cowboys on the top here, scroll down, then it's the Eagles, and you can change everything here. Very, very cool. But the first thing that I do, Adam, is I run it as is first to kind of see what the lineups look like, and then I'll adjust to see anything I want to change. Is that kind of your approach also?
Yeah, well, the inputs are mine, so
Sure. So you just use them.
Yeah, if I get overruled by like Yuta later in the week or Davis or something, I'll just change it back. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that's what I would do if I were using it. Or I mean, you could. The counter argument, I guess, would be like, if you have the time and you're somebody that, like, you know, knows ball and knows what you're looking for, like, you could make your adjustments first so that, like, you're not biased by.
True.
Like,
Yeah.
I would want to make sure that I'm avoiding. I don't want to, like, say, well, I know that I want CD Lamb, so I'm gonna run everything. I'm not getting CD Lamb, so that means his market share is too low.
Right.
Like, you want to avoid that unless you have like a good reason for thinking the target share is too low, other than he's not showing up in lineups.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense if you just want to run it as is. And like, there's no reason that you have to make adjustments. That is something that I like to do as somebody who likes to think I know ball and likes to make adjustments and get a little bit different from the field. But yeah, that is true. Interestingly, the top lineup here in terms of EV, so 202% EV on this one, really positive EV on this lineup, uses the full salary cap, which is interesting, but it is a Dak double stack with Jalen Tolbert and Javonte Williams. So kind of a unique double stack that includes Javonte Williams, who again, they want to pass to the running back. It also has a naked Jalen Hurts in here, so assuming probably some rushing touchdowns in the Sims, and then the kicker, Jake Elliott, coming back. So sort of unique in that sense. But
I
before,
feel like even though it's, oh, sorry.
I was
Even
just going
though
to
it's
say,
50K, I would expect it not to be like duped. I mean,
yeah,
it'll be duped, I'm sure, but like as much because of just like who it's missing. It doesn't have Lamb, it doesn't have Pickens, it doesn't have Brown, it doesn't have Devontae. So that probably is helping out.
let's see, does it show me predicted dupes 26? So it's predicted to have 26 dupes, but for a lineup that's going to project really well and use the full salary cap, that's not actually that crazy high number of dupes. Part of the beauty of having Nerdy Tenor as part of this, and this is something he's always talking about, it's like, you don't necessarily want to be completely unique. You just want to have like lineups that are like project well relative to you want the top EV lineups, I guess, is essentially what it comes down to. And that is what we are seeing here.
And you have to keep in mind too that like the raw number of dupes is all relative. Like if you're playing 100K to first, 30,000 entry tournament, 26 is not, like, you probably don't want 26 dupes. If you're playing $1 million to first with 176,000 entries, 26 is probably fine.
Yeah. Do you have anything else that you just want to say while we've got you here for another 5 minutes? And I probably won't be. I might leave right when you do. Also, we'll see. But do you have anything that you want to say about the Run the Sims product? Any like tips for people as they try to use the product? I know you are also pretty new to it, so
yeah,
cool.
I'm kind of figuring it out on the fly too because I'm not involved on the back end coding planning thing. I mean, really, I would say if you're using it early on, jump in Discord because it's right now a lot of like, hey, this isn't working right, or hey, am I doing this right, or whatever. So like everybody has questions. Brick has been in there pretty much all morning answering stuff and saying how things work. So yeah, like definitely I think he's also recording another video right now with like tips and tricks on how to use it. So that'll be up, but I would definitely, the Discord is free. So I would just jump in there. And if you have any questions at all, just ask them.
Yep. I realized that I had to make it a little bit smaller, move it down so people can kind of see what we're looking at, the different settings in here. But yeah, that'll be super useful at some point once I have a better handle on it. Probably not today, maybe more likely this weekend or something. I would like to make a how-to once I have a good handle on it, but I'm not ready to yet. So I will at some point as I'm trying to. But you can see there's bunch of different slates you can choose. Inputs, this is where you can adjust things as you see the game script. You can change the settings, so you can say so number of lineups. That would be in the contest you are. Oh, that's the number of lineups that it's simming against each other. Is that correct? And then size of contest field would be like if I'm playing. Oh, and that was just a small field. So if I'm playing a very large contest, I'd want to use maybe 15K as a contest field, and then the number of sims. So it's number of lineups, number of sims that it's running against each other. So higher is going to take longer. And then size of contest field would be like if you're playing a really large field versus small field. Do you think I'm understanding this correctly?
Yeah, and you want to adjust the payout structure too. Like
Yeah,
the
top
size
heavy.
of contest field, like obviously tonight the millie is like 176,000 entries.
Yep.
Because of time constraints, you can't actually like do that. But the combination of you get functionally the correct results by combining the top heavy payout structure with the 15,000 size field, and then the top one, the number of lineups, is how many lineups you want it to build for you.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. That makes sense. There's also this lineups that I believe is going to be activated at some point, grayed out down here. But there are some things that
I don't think that was even there this morning.
Okay. Yeah. So there are other settings that you're going to be able to adjust. They're working hard on the back end. That's part of the reason that we're not up to date, is that they're getting everything going still. But then you can see, this is where you can see in your optimal results how much you got of each player in the Sims. You can see your custom lineup. So here you can adjust the number of lineups. So like if I'm going to play 150 right now, it's showing me 10,000 lineups. If I only want to export 150 and I want to export the top 150, I put 150 in here, and now you can see this got smaller. There's only 150 lineups here. So if you want to download that as a CSV, here's where you can do that. There are some filtering options, projections. I guess this you adjust these with the inputs though, right? So it's just showing you.
So to be clear, like also because it's kind of counterintuitive if you're not thinking about what it's doing. For the projections, you're not going to have projections until you run the Sims, because the projections are generated by our play-by-play Sims. So at the beginning, that's, on the inputs, that's what the target share and everything is. That's what's being utilized in the play-by-play Sims. So then it's taking all of those market shares, whatever, and it's saying, okay, Dak throws, 30% of the time that Dak throws, it's going to CD Lamb, and then CD Lamb catches it X% of the time, blah, 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 blah. And that's where you're getting the projections from. So that your projections tab won't be populated until after you run the Sims. And then it's giving you the projections, that those are the results of all of the Sims that it ran with the inputs that you put in.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like you don't see the projections until you run the Sims, then you get the Sims generate the projections for you, which is, I think, just generally how projections are done a lot of places anyway. But this is here, you get to see it in action, which is pretty cool. And you get
that's why also you will get slight variances, like differences. If you CD Lamb might project for 21.7 and then you run them again and he's 21.4 or whatever. That's why you'll see that too, is it's not an algorithm projected or generated projection. It's coming straight out of the Sims.
Yeah, pretty cool. Adam, I know you need to get out of here. I'll just go a few minutes longer. I think I'll answer some questions, maybe change the screen slightly so we can look at run the Sims a little bit longer, but I'm not going to be going too much longer. But Adam, do you have anything else that you want to shout out before you get out?
No, I appreciate everybody checking out the show. Check out Run the Sims, jump in Discord. Really excited for this season. Hopefully somebody kicks it off with $1 million tonight. Yeah, let's do it. Let's win some money. All right, Adam, we'll be back see you then. All right, peace. And I am going to, let me change the screen a little bit here, because I'm kind of going to remove the side piece there. Let's see, I'll go this one, and then I'll take off the questions thing so we can kind of see a fuller screen of what I'm looking at. So yeah, I'll answer a few questions here, and again, I'm still kind of learning what I'm doing. Adam and I had a little tutorial with somebody from the original Run the Sims this week to kind of give us a better head start on how to use it. But I have to admit, I'm still pretty fresh with Run the Sims. I'm just trusting this team because I think they are some of the best. What's a game script that's reasonable that you'll be playing? I would say it's definitely reasonable to play Eagles Dominate. So just play a ton of Saquon Barkley, maybe even throw Will Shipley into a lineup with Saquon Barkley, and then the Cowboys passing game. I think that would be a game script that I will have
some of at least. They are 8.5-point favorites. They have a dominant offensive line, so I could see both Eagles running backs getting there, and then the Cowboys just passing a ton. I think that could be kind of a fun way to play it. Do you guys feel that teams that did not play starters at all in the preseason start the season slower, and I can see them not going full throttle on Barkley? Yeah, it's kind of how I feel too, that they could try to lighten the load on Barkley a little bit after, I mean, a million regular season carries, and then they won the Super Bowl, so they were getting a million carries in the playoffs as well for Barkley. I wouldn't be shocked to see them try to lighten the load whenever possible, particularly early in the season. I still think as long as the game is competitive, they're probably going to lean into one of their best players. But yeah, that seems reasonable. And I don't really have a strong opinion about teams that rested their starters in the preseason. I don't think that they start slower, but that's something that somebody else probably has better data on that than I do. Yes, cutoff line. I think it was Devonta Smith. I don't remember. He's referring to. I set a refresh and reload the slate. And ownership should populate. Oh, okay. So we do have ownership now. Nice. Thank you, Brick. All right, so we're going to go to refresh and reload. So I'm going to reset all, refresh. Maybe I'm doing this wrong, but let me try this. If I go to Dallas at Philly Showdown. Oh, good. They do have, okay, so captain ownerships, they've got Run the Sims does have the ownership populated 10% to Dak Prescott, 2% to Javonte Williams, 12% CeeDee Lamb, 2% George Pickens. I don't think I can sort here. 2% George Pickens is pretty nice. A lot of players getting 0% at captain. And then flex ownership, 42%. 40%. You've got 40% going to Javonte Williams. That would be too rich for my blood. Decent ownership on Lamb and Pickens. Turpin pretty high. Eagles, you've got 38%. That's pretty nice. But 37% captain ownership to going to Jalen Hurts. So it's just a lot more at captain as opposed to in the flex for Jalen Hurts. That's interesting. Saquon Barkley, 18% captain, 33% flex. So that's a little bit less appealing than where he was 15% I think at RG. 37% to AJ Brown, 11% captain. I really like 4%. If Devonta Smith is 4% at captain, I will be jamming that. I'll play a lot there. Goddard, 1%. All right. But so here, I'll answer questions, then maybe I'll run one more sim after making some adjustments here. Good luck. I recommend having like 3 studs in every lineup. And I think Devonta Smith is maybe the line there for me, or I don't know if George Pickens is cheaper. Do I start Ferguson or Goddard week 1? I think I'm starting Dallas Goedert in one of my leagues. I don't love it. I'm not excited about it, but I Goddard is fine. Ferguson would be a little bit tougher. Are you going to play the Jerry Jones was right game script? Probably not. All right, we're getting tutorial in chat from Brick75, one of the owners of Run the Sims, one of the best DFS players of all time. Says easy way to change game script on Run the Sims is change the points scored, like if bad weather, change the score and pace, and you will get the best lineups if that game script. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's good. That's an easy way to do it. Just change the number of, as opposed to going in and changing every individual player. Martin says Cowboys plus 8.5 feels like free money to me. How do I translate that to my lineup? Change DAC ownership and click normalize. Okay, let's see. Yeah, and that's a good tip also. So there's a normalize button up here. So if you are adjusting things, and you can also smart adjust, which is you maintain the proportions that you have. So let's say Dak Prescott. I actually haven't tried this with ownership. So we're projecting Dak Prescott for 42% ownership, and you can see Javonte Williams at 40%, CeeDee Lamb 35%, George Pickens at 35%. This is the first time I'm trying this, but we're going to see what does it do for the ownership of other players if I change Dak to 60% and then click normalize. Everybody else's ownership, all the expensive players' ownership at least goes down a little bit. I think everybody kind of went down a little bit, except for maybe did Schoonmaker go up? I should have noted that. I think Schoonmaker went up because if you're going to have that much Dak, you probably need some more of the cheaper players. But most of the expensive guys went down slightly. Hurts went down slightly, very slightly, actually not much at all. I mean, it's worth playing with. And then you can, if you wanted to, you can smart adjust it before you click normalize, and then it will maintain the relative, maintain the proportions between market share and touchdown share. Oh yeah, it'll maintain, I see. Maintain the proportions that they have in these columns. But then, yeah, if you think that it's free money, then what you would do is you would change the points that Dallas scores here. So you can change, rather than changing both teams, you just change, I think Dallas is going to easily beat that spread. So give them 23 points. And then you run the sims and it will, account for Dallas scoring 23 points, higher number of points there. So I guess that would be, to answer your question, Martin, how you would translate that into your lineups. Appreciate you, Steven. Yeah, good reminder. Please do like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Trying to get to 6,000 by the end of the NFL season. Turpin Captain Huhaim says, that's what I was on earlier. Oh, they all went down somewhat. Okay. Yep. Max 500% ownership and flex possible. If you raise one player, it will proportionally adjust all the other players. Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if correlation would change to some players up in that scenario, but that makes sense that just proportionally, easy enough. Any changes you make will happen in the actual sim as well, ownership or player stats. So let's do one thing. So let's go with one of the, I'm going to reset and try, or no, let's run it like this. So we have Dak at 60% ownership, but the Cowboys scoring 23. Let's move this down. Actually, let me reset. I just want to start fresh here. I'm going to run one sim and then I will get out here. So we've got Dak at 42% ownership. So if we keep the ownerships the same, but we assume, actually, I'm going to run two sims. I'm going to run one now. We're going to look at it, and then I'm going to run one more after I adjust up the number of fantasy points, or the number of points we expect the Cowboys to score. I just want to see what it looks like, and then I'm going to get out of here. We're running the sim. Has not been super slow. Takes, I think, under a minute. Haven't been timing it though. I will suggest, if you are using Run the Sims today, although I have full faith in the team, because this is the first day, I would recommend getting your lineups in early. I actually recommend that, getting an A set of lineups, regardless of what you're using early, but particularly first day of NFL with a brand new team running the product, new product, essentially, I would recommend making sure you get your lineups in early here. All right, so we have the top lineup, Dak, CD, Pickens, Tolbert, Turpin. So we've got a full-on Dallas stack here is the top EV lineup in this set of sims, with just Saquon Barkley coming back from the Eagles. That one is predicted for just one dupe. That'd be pretty nice. Some ownership, 141%. Yeah, I guess we have both Tolbert and Turpin in here. So not expecting a ton of people using that full-on onslaught. But I want to see what it looks like if I now go back. Oh, let's see, plus EV players. Spam 4, Lipke, Tolbert up there, Turpin up there. So in this set of sims, a lot of minus EV players, some plus EV players also. And looking at the, what do I want to see? I want to see optimal results. So we're getting to 75% total on Jalen Hurts, 51% Saquon Barkley, 52% Dak Prescott, 47. So I want to track 52%. No, wait. Optimal rate, that's ownership, flex ownership, flex rate, captain rate. Okay, so this would be optimal. So we're getting to, in terms of the optimal lineups, you're getting to 48.6% Dak. So he would be a slightly over-owned by the optimal rate versus ownership here. CeeDee Lamb massively over-owned in this set, 47% total ownership to just 32% flex rate and 8.4% captain rate. So we're looking at 40% total optimal rate for CeeDee Lamb. Now I just want to see, so 40% for CeeDee Lamb, total optimal rate, and then Dak a little bit under 60%. So if I go back and just change it to Dallas scores, let's change it to 25 points. I want to see if that'll make it look significantly different. And I'm going to run that. Oh, I also I have the wrong field size on. Okay, so so you would want to adjust the field size for what you are playing. Has Brian Schottenheimer ever been a head coach? I don't think so. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe he's ever been a head coach, though. Yeah, Don says best use case if sims are popping, guy is 1%, you can cheat at 3%. All right. Well, I'm not going to adjust it. I just want to see if this would change the way things look. We're still getting the top, same lineup as the top EV lineup in this one after changing, which doesn't kind of make sense after we changed it to Dallas scoring 25. And now we have, if we go to optimal results, CD Lamb up to, actually he's gone up a little bit in terms of, he was 40%. Now he's a little bit over 40% in terms of how often he shows up as the optimal captain and the optimal flex, or how often he shows up in top optimal lineups. I guess this is also across all lineups. And then Dak up to 15% captain, optimal rate, 52% flex rate. I guess because we're getting a lot more Dak, it's hard to have him with both Dak and Lamb. So that makes sense. So we're getting Dak is up quite a bit with Cowboys scoring a lot. Tolbert also now looks great. He's getting over 34% essentially. So Tolbert looking like a good play here. All right. Just wanted to kind of show you a little bit. I'm going to be doing a lot more content on Run the Sims. I'm not using portfolio mode. I'm going to try that later. I don't know how to use it yet, Shady. We need to talk. I need to talk to you. So we will learn that. But not going to extend this stream any longer. I will be back streaming tonight about 90 minutes before lock. So 85 to 90 minutes after inactives come out. I'll be back tonight to do another Showdown show. I'll run the Sims on the show. I'll go over how things have changed based on inactives, etc. Once again, so if you want to be there, please do. I'll have to do a settings checkbox. So okay, I just wanted to. So if I could just go to the settings tab. Okay, all I have to do for the Shady is click diversify portfolio. If I'm doing 150 lineups, do that. Okay, all right, that's pretty easy to do. I'll see how it works tonight. I'll check that out tonight. We'll be back later on. Thank you all very much for checking out the channel. Please do like the video if you haven't done so. Please subscribe. Trying to get to 6,000 by the end of the NFL season. Appreciate you all very much. Use promo code Neil at Run the Sims if you want to check it out for 10% off your first purchase. Catch you guys later.